I woke up to silence. No buzzing phone. No barrage of happy birthday messages. Just sunlight spilling through the blinds, slicing the room into warm and cold. For a second, I let myself believe the quiet was intentional, peaceful. Like maybe this was what healing looked like. But I think I already knew. Birthdays have always been weird in my family. Not tragic, not dramatic, just forgettable. Growing up, my sister always had themed cakes and matching balloons, and I usually ended up with leftover sheet cake from whatever discount store was closest to home that week. It wasn't that anyone hated me. It was just that I was easy to overlook. I learned early how to make myself small enough not to disrupt whatever else was going on. Still, I wanted this year to feel different. I was turning 29. Not quite a milestone, but close enough to make me reflect. I had planned a solo brunch, eggs Benedict, maybe a mimosa if I was feeling brave. A hike afterward, a stop at the bookstore, maybe even a journal entry by the lake. I didn't want anything big. Just a day that felt mine. At 9:43 a.m., my phone buzzed. I remember the time because I had just poured the first bit of batter onto my pan, and it made that satisfying hiss as it met the heat. It was a text from my sister, of course. "Hey, can you watch Lily today? Something came up last minute. Just a few hours. You're the best." No happy birthday. No acknowledgement of the day at all. Just a need. That was the thing about being the reliable one. You became everyone else's plan B, even on days that should have been about you. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could have said no. I probably should have. But then I thought of Lily's little voice, the way she squeals my name like I'm her favorite cartoon character. She's 4, with cheeks like peaches and questions that never stop coming. She makes me feel like I matter. So I replied, "Sure." "What time?" My pancakes burned on one side while I waited for her to answer. By 10, I had swept the living room, put away anything breakable, and set up Lily's favorite toys. My sister showed up right on time, which surprised me. She was wearing high-waisted jeans and a linen blouse tucked just right, casual, but like she wanted to be seen. Her makeup was light, her curls freshly set. "Thanks, seriously," she said, handing off Lily's bag. "You're a lifesaver." "Where are you headed?" I asked, only halfway curious. "Just a thing with the family," she said, brushing it off. "Nothing major. We didn't want to bring Lily because it might run long and she's been cranky all week." "Family." I paused. "Oh. What kind of thing?" She didn't meet my eyes. Just kissed Lily's forehead and said, "We'll be back around 6, maybe 7. Love you." And then she was gone. I watched from the window as she pulled out of the driveway. The street was still, almost dreamlike in the late morning haze. A few doors down, someone was mowing their lawn. The scent of freshly cut grass hit me, and it made me feel oddly hollow. Lily, oblivious to anything other than the present, tugged at my shirt and asked if we could build a fort. So we did. We spent the next few hours in a cocoon of giggles and chaos. We had a tea party with stuffed animals, made peanut butter and banana sandwiches, and watched Moana for what felt like the 100th time. And honestly, it wasn't bad. Lily was my sunshine, even if she came wrapped in exhaustion. But at some point, I don't know when exactly, I needed a break. I set her up with a coloring book and quietly stepped into the kitchen. My phone was on the counter, untouched since the morning. I picked it up, not expecting anything. Still nothing. No texts. No missed calls. No birthday wishes. Out of some dumb reflex, I opened Instagram. The first story that loaded was from my cousin. It was a boomerang, the kind with red solo cups clinking together in a cheers motion. Behind them was a long table set in my mom's backyard. Balloons. Lights. A cake. Another slide showed my mom, holding a plate of ribs and smiling with that proud mama glow she usually saves for holiday dinners. I tapped forward. There was my brother and his wife. My dad in his silly barbecue apron. My sister, the one who just dropped Lily off, posing with a margarita in one hand and my aunt in the other. Then the final slide. A close-up of the cake. It said, "Family Weekend Bash." I just stared at the screen. Everything felt too quiet. I could still hear Lily humming softly from the other room, her markers squeaking against the paper. There it was. Everyone. Together. Except me. I blinked, once, then again. The air felt too thick. Like my own apartment was pressing in on me. My ears buzzed, but my heart was calm, eerily calm, like it didn't know whether to break or go numb. I don't know how long I stood there. Eventually, I walked back into the living room and sat beside Lily, who was now curled up like a kitten, fast asleep on the couch. Her tiny hand still clutched a purple crayon. I tucked a blanket around her and stared at her face. She looked so peaceful. So completely untouched by the small betrayals of adulthood. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Instead, I picked up the crayon and started doodling nonsense on the corner of her page. Swirls. Stars. A broken heart, without meaning to. At 6:47 p.m., my sister texted, "On my way." No explanation. No update. Just logistics. She came in like she always did, cheerful, distracted, grateful in a way that felt more like habit than sincerity. "She do okay?" she asked, grabbing Lily's bag. "Yeah," I said quietly. "She's a dream." She looked around like she had somewhere else to be. "Awesome. Thanks again. Seriously. You're the best." She turned to leave. And then she stopped, like she forgot something, and said, "Oh. By the way. Mom says hi." That was it. Not happy birthday. Not sorry you missed it. Just Mom says hi. And I smiled, this small, tired thing, and said, "Tell her I said, thanks." The door shut behind her. I listened to the fading sound of their car rolling down the street. And for the first time that day, I let myself feel it. Not anger. Not even sadness, really. Just this low, aching confirmation of something I'd been afraid to admit. I wasn't really part of them anymore. Not the way I used to be. Maybe not the way I thought I ever was. I couldn't sleep that night. It wasn't just the usual restlessness, it was something heavier. A thick silence that filled the room, the kind that hums under your skin. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering when the shift had really happened. At what point did I stop being someone they thought to include? The next morning, I opened my phone. No new texts. No missed calls. Just one of those on this day photo memories from 3 years ago. It was a blurry picture of me holding Lily as a baby, smiling too hard, cheeks flushed, birthday candles lit behind us. I remembered that night. We were at Mom's house. I baked my own cake. They forgot plates. I tapped out of the memory and checked Instagram again. My cousin had posted more pictures from the family weekend. Matching shirts. Cornhole games. A cousin's only selfie. I wasn't in a single frame. It was like I'd been edited out of their version of reality. I told myself to let it go. that I was being dramatic. But I couldn't shake it. That familiar itch under the surface, the need to make sense of something that doesn't want to be understood. Later that week, my brother called out of the blue. He sounded guilty. Said he was in town for a few days and invited me to a small dinner at our parents' place. No big deal, he said. Just come by. It wasn't an apology, but I took it as a peace offering. I showed up that Sunday around 5. I wore a soft green dress and brought a bottle of wine, even though I knew no one would drink it but me. When I walked in, the house smelled like rosemary chicken and lemon pie. For a moment, it felt almost normal. Until it didn't. No one greeted me at the door. I let myself in, like always. In the kitchen, Mom was setting the table. She looked up, gave a distracted "Oh hey, you made it," then went back to rearranging the forks. I stood there holding the wine, unsure what to do with it. My sister brushed past me, laughing about something with our cousin. She didn't even pause. I set the wine down on the counter and offered to help. "No, it's all under control," Mom said, her tone polite but clipped. "Just find a seat." There were name cards on the table, a new thing, I guessed. Little white cards in gold ink. I smiled at the thought, until I realized something. There was no card for me. I scanned the table again, slower this time. Everyone had a place. Even Lily had a spot between my mom and sister. I stood there, unsure. Then my dad walked in, saw me lingering, and gestured casually toward the kitchen stool by the island. "Just grab a plate and pull up over there," he said. Not unkindly. But not kindly either. I nodded, too quickly. Sure. Totally fine. I grabbed a plate and sat on the stool, knees bent awkwardly, like I was at the kids' table. Except there was no kids' table. Just me. The meal went on without pause. Conversations flowed over and around me. People reached past my plate to grab bread, never looking. No one asked about my week, my job, my life. I said "excuse me" twice and got no response either time. Lily turned to me once and asked if I wanted to color after dinner. I smiled and said yes, and for a moment, it grounded me. After we ate, everyone moved to the living room. I started gathering plates, just out of habit. It's what I'd always done growing up. My mother used to call me her little helper. I used to think that meant something, now I realized it meant I could be useful without being seen. I stacked dishes in the sink when I heard a soft ding from a phone on the counter. My sister's phone. Unlocked. A group chat open. Family trip, no drama. I didn't mean to read it. I swear I didn't. But my eyes caught the last few messages. "Mom, glad we kept it simple. No awkward energy this time." My sister, "Yeah, just us this round equals peaceful AF." Cousin Jess, "Honestly felt like how it's supposed to be." I locked the screen before I could see more. My hands were suddenly trembling, dish soap sliding off my fingers. My heart didn't drop, it turned to stone. Heavy. Cold. Final. They didn't forget. It wasn't accidental. It was curated. My presence, or lack of it, was a conscious choice. I excused myself to the bathroom and sat on the closed lid of the toilet, staring at the beige tile floor. My reflection in the mirror looked tired. The kind of tired that sleep can't fix. And just like that, memories began unraveling in my head like a reel on fast forward. I was 10 when my birthday party got cancelled because my sister twisted her ankle during soccer practice. We never rescheduled. I was 16 when I got into the honors program and no one came to the ceremony because my brother's dog had a vet appointment. Not surgery. Just an appointment. I was 17 when my sister blamed me for breaking Mom's favorite vase, even though I'd been out of town that weekend. She cried. They believed her. I remember sitting on the porch that night, grounded, while she went to prom. She posted a picture in her blue dress with the caption, "Best night ever." I still have that photo saved, not because I liked it, but because I needed proof. Proof that the story I told myself wasn't all in my head. I returned to the kitchen, back to the soft clatter of dessert plates and the low hum of conversation. I felt like a ghost walking through their version of the world. No one asked where I'd gone. No one noticed I was gone at all. I helped clean. I hugged everyone goodbye. I said thank you, it was lovely, and smiled like my ribs weren't caving in. On the drive home, I cried in traffic. Not loud sobs. Just slow, leaking tears that blurred the brake lights ahead of me. I kept wiping them away with the sleeve of my sweater like I could keep them hidden, even from myself. That night, in bed, I replayed the group chat in my head over and over. Just us this round equals peaceful AF. I wondered how many rounds there had been. How many other just us dinners or trips or wine nights had come and gone without me knowing. How long had they been editing me out? And worse, how long had I been pretending not to notice? I didn't text them right away. I let the messages simmer in the corners of my mind, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. That maybe I'd misread the group chat, or that just us meant something softer. That maybe I was the one building walls where there were none. But 3 days later, while sitting in my car outside the pharmacy, I finally opened our family group thread. My fingers hovered for a second. Then I typed, "Hey, just wondering, why wasn't I invited to the family weekend? Was it a mistake or something?" I added a smiley face. "I don't know why." My mom replied first. "Sweetheart, we didn't think you'd mind watching Lily. You always say how much you love spending time with her." I read it twice. Then 3 times. It wasn't an answer. It was a gentle redirection. Like they were saying, "But look how good you are at being useful." A few minutes later, my sister chimed in. "Ugh. Seriously? Why are you making this a thing? You're being super sensitive. It was a casual get-together. We didn't want a big group, that's all." I stared at that message until the screen dimmed. Super sensitive. That phrase stuck to my ribs like something I couldn't cough up. I'd been hearing it for years. Every time I flinched at a cruel joke. Every time I asked for the bare minimum of kindness. "You're just being sensitive." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't sound like begging. That weekend, my brother invited me to his wife's birthday dinner. He was the only one who ever tried to be neutral. Switzerland in a family full of landmines. I didn't want to go. But something in me, some leftover part that still hoped, said yes. It was held at a restaurant downtown. Mid-range trendy, all reclaimed wood and exposed bulbs. When I got there, the hostess looked confused when I gave her my name. She checked her list and blinked. "Oh. We have a table for 10 under the family name. But I don't see a place setting for." I nodded before she finished. "It's okay. I'll just sit wherever." She led me to the table, where everyone else had already started sipping cocktails. My seat was at the very end. No glass. No menu. Just an empty space, like someone canceled at the last minute and they hadn't cleared it yet. I sat down and tried to fold into the laughter. But the noise buzzed around me like a conversation through thick glass, visible but unreachable. My sister was 3 seats down, dressed in a floral top and gold hoops, laughing at something my cousin said. She hadn't noticed me. Or maybe she had. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to the restroom. Not because I needed to, just to breathe. To get away from the way my name hadn't been said once since I arrived. The hallway to the bathroom passed a small alcove where the servers took smoke breaks. It was cracked open slightly. Just enough. I wouldn't have stopped. I never eavesdrop. But I heard my name. And she's just always so intense about everything, my sister was saying. I froze. I mean, we love her, sure, but she makes everything so heavy. Like even when she's just sitting there, you can feel it. The tension. Someone laughed. I couldn't tell who. She used to be fun. Back when she'd just go along with stuff. But now she's got this chip on her shoulder, like everything's some deep emotional moment. Another voice joined in, my mother's. She's always been dramatic. Even as a kid. Remember that birthday she cried over because we couldn't make it to her little choir thing? It wasn't even a solo. They laughed again. My heart folded into itself. She's just so extra now, my sister added, voice lower. Honestly, we needed that weekend without her. It was the first time in ages we could actually relax. Something crashed in me then. Not a loud break. Just a quiet shatter, like fine china in another room. I didn't wait for more. I stepped back, walked slowly to the restroom, and locked myself in a stall. My breath came shallow. Controlled. I stared at the graffiti on the door, layers of strangers' words overlapping in chaos. It somehow felt safer than hearing my name said by people who claimed to love me. I sat on the closed lid and rested my forehead against the cool metal. They'd laughed about me. Made me into a punchline I didn't know I was auditioning for. I remembered being 9 years old, standing in the doorway of the kitchen, watching as they all planned my sister's birthday trip. I wasn't asked what I thought. I wasn't invited to help. I was just there, hovering like a shadow. I remembered being 15 and getting my heart broken for the first time. I tried to talk to Mom, but she told me to stop being dramatic and asked if I could help her frost cupcakes for my sister's volleyball banquet. I remembered being 22, broke and scared, when I offered to move back home for a bit. They said there wasn't really space. But when my sister wanted to move back with her boyfriend, they remodeled the basement. I could feel the timeline curling in on itself, patterns repeating like déjà vu that finally made sense. And then there was Lily. Earlier that week, she had curled up in my lap while we watched a movie. She was tracing lines on my arm with her tiny fingers when she suddenly said, "Mommy said you'd make the trip weird." I had laughed, awkwardly. What trip? But she didn't answer. She just went back to drawing invisible shapes. Now I understood. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a last-minute thing. It was a decision. They had a version of family that didn't include the weight of me. The emotions. The expectations. The parts of me that needed more than surface-level love. And I, stupidly, kept showing up with open hands, waiting to be held. I didn't return to the table. I texted my brother. Not feeling well. Headed home. Tell her happy birthday. Then I turned off my phone. Not on silent. Not on do not disturb. Off. Completely. I walked through the city alone, feeling the sting of cold air on my skin like proof that I still existed. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. There was something oddly clean about that kind of heartbreak, like a mirror finally breaking after years of threatening to crack. It was done. And all that was left now was the quiet. I stopped answering their messages. At first, it was just to catch my breath, a few hours of silence after that dinner, after the overheard laughter and words I wish I could unhear. But then hours stretched into days, and those days felt like a balm. My phone stayed face down on my desk. The familiar notification chimes that used to stir hope or guilt became background noise I learned to ignore. I missed my nephew's birthday party. They posted pictures, of course, matching t-shirts, a bouncy castle in the background, my sister holding a cupcake and grinning with her perfect hair falling effortlessly around her shoulders. My name wasn't mentioned once. No one tagged me. In one group photo, they had an arm-shaped gap on the end, and I couldn't help but wonder if that's where I used to stand. Then the messages started changing tone. Are you mad or something? This is so over the top, you know that, right? We're all worried about you, but you're not making it easy. I wanted to scream. Not because they were checking in, but because it was always that same script. Me being the problem. Me being too much. Never once did anyone say, "Hey, I heard what you might have overheard. Can we talk about it?" Not one person asked if I was okay. They just filled in the silence with assumptions and judgments and the kind of false concern that feels more like surveillance than love. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Every reply I started felt like begging, like trying to prove I deserved decency. And I was tired. So tired. My cousin removed me from a group chat. No message. Just gone. A week later, they renamed it Core Crew. I saw the new name because someone posted a screenshot of an inside joke on Facebook. I recognized the format. I had made the group years ago when we were planning a surprise for my mom's birthday. They had edited me out of the thing I created. That night, I opened an old notebook from college. I used to journal every day, not in a poetic, Tumblr aesthetic way, but in messy, desperate scrawl. Half-finished sentences. Angry underlines. The handwriting of someone trying to hold her mind together. I turned to a fresh page and wrote. They love the version of me that doesn't need anything. The words sat there, heavy. I stared at them until they blurred. Then I kept writing. They say I'm sensitive like it's a flaw. But maybe feeling deeply isn't the problem. Maybe their comfort matters more than my pain. I wrote until my hand cramped. Until the ache in my chest softened just enough to breathe again. The next morning, I messaged Danielle, a friend from college I hadn't talked to in almost a year. We had been roommates junior year, back when everything felt possible and hard in equal measure. She was the kind of person who always noticed when someone was too quiet for too long. Her reply came fast. Hey. You okay? I've been thinking about you lately. Wanna talk? I don't remember what I said. Just that an hour later, we were on a video call, and I was crying before she even asked a question. It wasn't the ugly kind of cry, more like a quiet leak from a well that had been sealed too long. She listened. Really listened. Not with that fix-it energy, but with warmth and presence. When I finished explaining everything, the texts, the dinner, the erasure, she didn't tell me I was overthinking. She just said, "That sounds really painful. And I believe you." No one had said that before. A few days later, she sent me a link to a local therapist who specialized in family systems and emotional trauma. I filled out the intake form that night, my hands trembling the whole time. I kept expecting something to go wrong, for the session to get cancelled, for me to be told I didn't qualify for help. But it didn't. I had my first appointment the following Tuesday. The room was quiet, soft-lit, with a pale blue couch and a small water fountain trickling in the corner. The therapist was maybe in her 40s, kind eyes, no-nonsense voice. She didn't waste time. She asked about what brought me in, and I tried to start somewhere small. But instead, I said, I feel like I don't matter to them. Like I'm only useful when they need something. I surprised myself. I hadn't meant to say that out loud yet. Maybe not ever. Her expression didn't shift. She just nodded, then gently asked, How long have you felt that way? And that's when it hit me. Not just weeks or months. Always. I told her about the roles in my family, how I was the fixer, the quiet one, the peacekeeper. How my sister was always the one who needed protecting, defending, understanding. How I learned early that my feelings were secondary, distractions from whatever chaos was louder. She talked about enmeshment. About how some families confuse love with control, presence with obligation. About how guilt can be weaponized without anyone realizing it's happening. About how sometimes being the good one means learning how to disappear without making a fuss. I left that first session raw. But not broken. For the first time, I felt like someone was handing me a map. Not to escape, but to understand where I'd been walking in circles. Later that week, my sister posted a selfie from a brunch with my mom. The caption read, Grateful for real family. No drama, just love. I didn't react. Didn't comment. Just stared at it for a while, letting the words marinate. Then, something strange happened. Danielle sent me a screenshot. She had seen a post from someone I barely knew, an old mutual friend from high school who had been at that family dinner. She'd posted a vague tweet that said, Wild how some people get excluded from their own blood just for having feelings. Y'all need to do better. No names. No tags. But I knew what it was about. It was small. A whisper. But it cracked something open. Someone had noticed. Someone had seen me. And even though it didn't change anything, not the silence, not the group chats, not the erasure, it lit something inside me I thought was gone. Hope. Not that they would change. But that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't crazy for wanting better. It had been almost 3 months since the last family dinner. Since I turned off my phone, walked through the city alone, and let the silence become its own kind of peace. 3 months since I stopped explaining myself to people who never really listened. Since I stopped trying to belong in a room that felt colder every time I walked into it. I was doing better. Not whole, not healed, but clearer. I went to therapy weekly. I journaled, sometimes angrily, sometimes like I was writing to the version of myself that had waited too long to be loved right. Danielle and I started getting lunch together on Sundays. I wasn't laughing all the time, but I was breathing easier. The kind of ease that comes from not waiting for the next bruise. Then my brother called. He was never the problem. Never fully part of the damage, but never brave enough to stand against it either. Neutral. Switzerland. He asked me to come to a family dinner they were planning for our dad's birthday. Said it would be small. Chill. That everyone misses you. I almost said no. But something in me, not hope, but maybe readiness, whispered, go. Not for them. For you. So I said yes. I arrived 5 minutes early. I parked a little too far down the street and sat in my car, watching the porch light blink like a dying star. My heart was steady, not racing. I had told myself before walking out the door, you don't owe anyone a performance. Just presence. When I stepped inside, the first thing I noticed was the smell, roast chicken and cloves. The second thing was how little had changed. Same furniture. Same framed photos, none of which had been updated in years. I was still 17 in every one of them. "Look who's here," my mom called out from the kitchen, her voice sugar-sweet but distant. My sister popped around the corner in a pink sweater, holding a wine glass and an overdone smile. "Oh my God, hi. It's been forever." She hugged me like someone hugging a guest speaker. Quick, polite, impersonal. I gave her a small smile and hung my coat. The table was already set. 8 chairs. I wasn't sure which was mine, so I waited. No one offered. Dinner moved fast. Talk about the neighbor's new dog, my cousin's engagement, some joke about TikTok trends they didn't understand. I answered questions when asked, but only when asked. I didn't reach. I didn't lean forward. I let the space between us speak louder than I could. Then my dad raised his glass. He smiled the way he always did, wide and nostalgic. "To family," he said. "To the people who show up. Who've been there for every high and low. Who've always been the heart of this home." Everyone clinked their glasses. No one looked at me. I swallowed a sip of water. A quiet formed in my chest. Not a storm. Not a scream. Just certainty. I stood up slowly. "Excuse me," I said. Calm. Clear. I picked up my phone and walked into the hallway, toward the coat rack. That's when I heard small feet padding behind me. Lily. She looked up at me, wide-eyed, in her sparkly socks. "Don't go," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mommy said you always leave when you're mad." That broke something in me. Not from pain. From the finality of it. I knelt down to her level, eye to eye, and gently tucked her hair behind her ear. "I'm not mad, sweetheart," I said. "I'm just done pretending this feels like home." Her eyes flickered with confusion, then something deeper, understanding she didn't yet have words for. I kissed her forehead, stood up, and walked to the front door. My sister followed. "Wow," she whispered, just loud enough. "You're seriously doing this again?" I didn't respond. Not with words, anyway. I unlocked my phone, opened the screenshot folder I had kept, not to weaponize, but to anchor myself in the truth. I turned the screen toward her. The group chat. The comment, "We needed that weekend without her." The one I'd saved. The one she'd sent. Her face changed. Not guilt. Not shame. Just the pale stillness of someone realizing they'd been seen. "I don't need an apology," I said quietly. "But I need you to stop rewriting the story like I'm the villain for finally stepping out of it." Her mouth opened slightly, like she wanted to argue. But then, nothing. She said nothing. That was louder than any denial. As I opened the door, my brother stepped into the hallway. He didn't say much either. Just looked at me, then at the phone in my hand. Then back at me. "I didn't know," he said. And for the first time, I believed him. He looked like someone who had just been handed a different script than the one he'd memorized. "I know," I said softly. "It's okay." I walked outside. The air was cool. Bracing. Like stepping into a different world. Behind me, the house was still full of light and sound. But out here, there was truth. And that night, for the first time in a long time, I didn't cry. I just kept walking. I didn't cut them off. There was no dramatic announcement, no final goodbye text, no ceremonial blocking. It just happened, gently. Like a tide pulling back. One fewer message returned. One more event quietly skipped. An unanswered group chat that eventually stopped lighting up. I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped building new ones where the old ones kept collapsing under the weight of silence. My therapist called it choosing peace over proximity. It sounded clinical, but it felt sacred. I kept going to therapy. I kept journaling. I started taking walks after work, long, winding ones where I let myself wander without needing to be anywhere in particular. I stopped checking social media as often. The noise began to recede. The ache, too. And without that noise, something new started to bloom. I booked a weekend trip to a town I'd never been to. Just me. A little coastal spot with a used bookstore and salt in the air. I packed light. Didn't tell anyone. I sat in a cafe on the second morning with a notebook and wrote a list of things I didn't miss. Being the buffer. Being the backup. Being the easy yes. I didn't cry while writing it. I smiled. Softly. Like someone watching the ocean for the first time in months. My sister texted once, a couple weeks later. A short message. You around this weekend? Lily misses you. There was no apology. No recognition of what had happened. Just a hand extended, not entirely in love, but maybe in habit. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied. Give her a hug from me. I'm taking some space right now, but I hope she's doing well. Nothing more. Nothing less. She didn't respond. And that was okay. I didn't need her to. Months passed. The air shifted. I bought myself fresh flowers for no reason. I read novels by the window, candle flickering next to a cup of tea I wasn't rushing to finish. I started making a new kind of memory, not built on reactions or repair, but on intention. And then, my birthday came around again. No one asked if I was free that day. No one offered a last-minute babysitting gig. There were no group stories, no cakes I hadn't been invited to cut. The calendar was empty. And for the first time in my life, I loved that. I woke up early. Baked a tiny cake just for myself, lemon with a thin layer of buttercream. No candles. Just quiet. I wrote a letter that morning, folded it neatly, and tucked it into the back of my journal. It started with, to the girl who waited at the window for years, you don't have to wait anymore. Then I drove. Just drove, with no destination. I ended up at a beach a few hours south, where the sand was soft and the sky was cloudless. I walked the shoreline barefoot, the wind brushing my hair like something maternal and forgiving. There was no music playing, no crowd, no backdrop to prove the moment happened. And yet, it felt more real than any birthday I'd had with a dozen people pretending not to see me. I sat on a piece of driftwood and watched the sun paint the ocean in gold. I whispered, not to anyone else, but to myself. This time, I didn't miss it. And I meant it. I didn't miss me. I didn't abandon myself to make others comfortable. I didn't shrink to fit a table that had no room for my fullness. I simply stayed. If you're watching this, maybe you've been there too. At the edge of a family photo that never captured the way your chest tightened just outside the frame. Maybe you've bent yourself in half trying to stay lovable. Or silent. Or easy. And maybe it's time you chose yourself, not in defiance, but in devotion. Because the truth is, sometimes the people we need the most are the ones who taught us how to live without them. And sometimes healing doesn't look like mending old ties. Sometimes it looks like standing barefoot at the edge of the world, whole and unafraid. And realizing you're finally home.